Okay, tonight we're going to be studying the reptiles, and if you're following along in your book, we're still in chapter 17, and I'm kind of doing these a little bit in my own order. So we're doing chapter 17-D, and this is class Reptilia, and we're going to be talking about the reptiles. The reptiles is one of the 5 classes of the phylum Chordata, one of the 5 vertebrates. And while most of the amphibians are aquatic, reptiles live on land, and they have several different things that allow them to do so, and we're going to be talking about that in this lecture. So with your notes, I've given you less guided notes in this particular lesson. I want you to focus your attention on the different body systems and the characteristics of the body systems. So you may have to kind of, as you have your notes out, and you'll see the different sections for digestive system, nervous system, circulatory system, integumentary system. As you see those, you may have to kind of bounce around. So have your notes ready to go, and each particular slide may give you information kind of out of order of the notes. So you're going to be taking a little bit more responsibility for your own note-taking here. I considered maybe just giving you a Cornell note sheet and giving you kind of your own free reign, but then I thought you might not get all of the pieces that I want you to get. So that's why there's some guidance, but not a lot. Now, tomorrow, or actually Monday, I believe, Monday's classroom activity is going to be more of a traditional homework assignment. I'm probably going to still let you work in groups, or at least with your table mate, and you will be using this lecture, so the notes from this lecture, along with your book to actually do the homework assignment. Okay, so here are just a few characteristics of reptiles. They are a vertebrate. They do have a backbone, and we're going to talk a little bit about their bone structure. They do have lungs. Snakes only have 1. The other reptiles have 2. They have a scaly skin. Integumentary is the skin system. And so for skin, they have a scaly skin, and they also have amniotic eggs. And we're going to go into a lot more detail about what amniotic eggs. Some other characteristics of the reptiles that helps them truly adapt to the land, to be land animals, is their lungs. They do have well-developed lungs. They also have a better circulatory system, and I know that this PowerPoint is kind of cutting off some of the words, and I wasn't able to fix those entirely before I needed to present it. So just kind of listen. They have efficient lungs. They have a better circulatory system that helps them develop for life away from water. Their skin protects them. It protects them from the elements and from desiccation, which is just a drying out. So their skin, they do not have to continually have their skin moistened for them to survive. And the amniotic egg is protected against drying out as well. So those eggs do not have to be in water like fish eggs do. Okay, let's take a look at their respiratory system. The lungs are a part of the respiratory system, and these lungs help them truly adapt to land. They use 2 efficient lungs. Notice that the lungs here in the diagram are connected to the circulatory system, so it helps to deliver oxygen. The reptiles use these 2 lungs, except for the snakes. Remember, they only have 1 long lung that fits their bodies, and these lungs help them to breathe, whereas we saw in some of the other creatures, they would breathe through their skin. Well, reptiles have a much thicker skin, allowing them to be on land, so they need a more defined respiratory system. In this integumentary system, with their skin, it is an adaptation to live a life out of the water. Their skin is waterproof. It's usually a leathery, kind of dry sensation. Those scales are actually protective to their body, and most of them are going to molt that. You've probably maybe even seen some pictures. I've got some in this presentation of where a snake sheds his skin. Right here. Here's a picture of a snake molting or shedding that outer covering. You can see right here, this part, see my red highlighter, this is him coming out of that. This whole thing here is a molted one. You can see where the eyes were. Again, right here, you can see right here where his eye was, and he's coming out of it. This is kind of more of an animated picture where he's kind of pushing that skin out. All right, let's talk a little bit about the amniotic egg. This is key for the reproductive system for reptiles. It can be compared to the development of seeds in plants. Now, reptiles' eggs are going to have this leathery shell, and it has several different membranes. You can see these membranes in this picture right here. All of these are different membranes, and your book goes into a lot of detail. The main ones that I want you to know is the first membrane is the amnion right here, this green one right here, the amnion. This grows around the embryo right here. You can see the embryo right inside here. Right here. Here's the word embryo. Here's the little reptile growing inside the amnion. And this amnion protects it in a fluid-filled sac, kind of like a placenta in a mammal. The second membrane is this yolk sac, this one right here. I want you to know that one as well, this yellow one, this yellow yolk sac, which surrounds the yolk. Now, as the yolk is consumed by the growing embryo, the growing organism, the sac is slowly drawn into the embryo and it will completely disappear altogether. So this is where the embryo is getting the nourishment. Okay, then the next level, the chorion, this is a membrane that lines the inner surface of the shell. See this brown layer right here? This lines the shell. And it's supplied with blood vessels from the embryo. And then the last one that I want you to know, the alanus. The alanus is a sac that contains blood vessels. It also aids in respiration and excretion. So this alanus one right here. This membrane right here. And this is important because if you did not have this, then waste would completely fill the embryo and they would not be able to breathe. They would not be able to expel waste. This kind of functions a little bit maybe like the umbilical cord in mammals. Now, the embryo in the amniotic egg is completely independent, self-sustaining. This is just a protective, moist home, and it has its built-in food supply and waste system all within this egg. Now, a little bit more about this egg. This is an adaptation so they can live on land. Amphibians are not able to move away from the water because their eggs would dry out, but reptiles are different. This amniotic egg totally encases the embryo, feeds them, keeps them moist, provides air, waste, so they can actually live on land. Okay, what about the digestive system? The way that an animal eats will include that in the digestive system. So as you're taking notes about feeding carnivores or herbivores, let's include that under the digestive system. Iguanas are an example of an herbivore. They are going to tear the plants with their teeth. They do have strong jaws, and they do have a long digestive system. We've been studying animals like the earthworm that have long digestive systems, and this is yet a similar kind of structure. Okay. Reptiles can also be carnivorous. So snakes have an extendable jaw right here. That's a unique feature of the snake is they have an extendable jaw so they can swallow their prey whole. Now snakes will eat other snakes, which kind of looks like what they're doing here. They can also eat entire eggs. They're going to swallow that egg whole. They'll pierce it with parts of their vertebrate. They'll suck out the insides and then they will actually spit out the shell through their mouth. Like I said, they also can eat other snakes. Lizards can kill with, they do have teeth, and some of them even have teeth further back in their stomach, so they have teeth in their mouth, and they have teeth in their stomach, so they can really kill and try. Chameleons have sticky tongues. This is another unique characteristic or feature of their digestive system, is they have sticky tongues that they can flash out there really fast and catch these insects. You can see this one right here. He has caught something and he's eating this one down here. You might not have even almost seen this one because of the camouflage that chameleons have. Okay, this slide did not get fixed, and I'm realizing that in the middle of the video. This is still part of the respiratory system, so just listen. You may have to kind of rewind some of this, but again, I've already said that their lungs are far more developed than amphibians. They do have muscular ribs that are going to help their chest expand, so they can draw in, that word there that you can't see is draw in the air. And they also have nostrils. Reptiles will have nostrils that help bring in the air while their mouth is closed. Now remember, snakes only have one long lung that fits inside their body, and snakes also have a tube, an air tube in their mouth, and I'm going to show that too, so they can breathe in air and swallow food all at the same time. I think I have a picture next right here. So right here, this is just holding back the teeth, but here is this air tube. So food can go in here, and then air can go into their breathing tube. So they're eating and breathing through the same large orifice, but they have different places where food and air go. So when we talk about transport, we're really talking about the circulatory system, because the circulatory system is going to carry blood, it's going to carry oxygen, and other nutrients in the blood that they need to survive. So reptiles are going to have a double loop system. Most of the reptiles are going to have a 3.5 chambered heart. The major difference is that the ventricle is partially divided by a septum or a wall. Partially divided. And this is going to keep the oxygen and the deoxygenated blood somewhat separate. In fact, about 60 to 90% of the blood stays separate as it leaves the heart to go out to either the lungs or to the other tissues that need oxygen. Now, during periods of activity, the movement of this septum may even completely isolate the two circulations and keep the blood unmixed. Now, it says that it has 3.5 chambers. Alligators and crocodiles will have 4 chambered hearts. So remember that fish, it says right here, fish have a 2-chambered heart. Right here, here's the 2 chambers. Then reptiles and amphibians have a 3-chambered heart. So there's 2 atria and 1 ventricle that's partially separated. And then mammals have a 4-chambered heart where they have 2 atria and 2 ventricles. And then again, here are the lung capillaries. Now with fish, they don't have lungs. Fish have gills. So when we see reptiles and amphibians, we're beginning to see the lungs. And that's one of the reasons why we dissect a frog, is because we're finally beginning to see that some of the same parts that mammals have. We have those lungs. So reptiles need a more efficient system for delivering oxygen. That is part of, or a characteristic or a need of, the respiratory system because of their integumentary system. Because they have dry skin, thick, leathery, dry skin, they need a more efficient respiratory system. So you might want to write that down regarding those two systems. Already we're beginning to see systems depend on each other, work together like in a mammal. And that is actually going to be a part of your final project, is talking about how systems work together. Now, what about the excretory system? Excretory system is the system that handles the waste. And this is not just urine and solid waste, but it's waste from the blood as well. So the kidneys produce the urine in the form of your uric acid. This uric acid then crystallizes, and when concentrated, is eliminated like a white paste, kind of like birds. The urine is either passed out directly through the cloaca or stored in the urinary bladder, where water is then further reabsorbed. Okay, what about the nervous system? Reptiles have brains, but they don't take up a whole lot of room. In fact, the crocodiles' percentage is less than 0.5% of their whole total body. And the brain does not fill the whole cranium as it does in birds or mammals and humans. And it's sometimes not even totally surrounded by bone. But despite this, they have a very, very acute senses. In the daytime, reptiles have good color vision. In fact, according to the research, turtles can see better than see color better than humans. And one of the most important sensory organs that we're going to talk about for snakes and many of the lizards is a pair of Jacobson organs. And these are pits in the roof of the mouth. I think I have a picture of that here in just a minute. And they contain nerve endings sensitive to chemicals, so they can actually know how to capture what's in the air. They can sense it. This sense can help reptiles find their prey, locate them, and even avoid certain predators just based on that scent. So they have a pair of nostrils. They also have these organs called vomeronasal organs on the roof of their mouth, these Jacobson organs, and the tongue picks up the chemicals and brings them in so they can taste the air. Now lizards have ears. They have a tympanum, kind of like, the grasshopper has a tympanum. Those are external hearing. And a single bone will transfer the sound to the inner ear. We have internal tympanums, those 3 little bones. Now, one of the differences, and I think I talk about at the end of your notes, the differences between snakes and lizards. Snakes are deaf. Snakes have no ears, but they do hear the vibrations from the ground, and then those Jacobson organs really kind of help them taste what's going on more than hear what's going on. Turtles do not have a tympanum, but they have a sound-conducting patch of skin on their head, kind of like this red ear slider turtle. That's how turtles hear. Now, reptiles, specifically the snakes, are able to detect heat. They have heat sensors, so they obtain a temperature image of their environment. Now, look here in this normal view. This is what they would see with their eyes, but because they have heat sensors as well, they're able to see the infrared. So you put the two together, and they would actually be able to eat a mammal in the dark better than, say, an insect, because those mammals are warm-blooded and are putting off an infrared heat that they can actually see. So here are those heat sensors. Here's what they see as they see the animal, but they also see the infrared as well, which truly helps them capture them, especially in these cases in the dark. Okay, what about their skeletal system and their muscular system? Again, these are some systems that you see on your notes pages. Muscle and skeletal systems are more advanced with reptiles than with amphibians. The snakes are going to press their ventral scales against the ground. Ventral meaning the ones towards the ground. And then they're going to use their muscles around the ribs. So they're going to use their muscles, their muscular system, along with their skeletal system, the ribs, and contract. Expand and contract, expand and contract. And that's what's creating that S shape there in the dirt as they move. And that's how they move. They're expanding their muscles up against. Now lizards, specifically the gecko, have special flaps of skin on their toes that create very sticky appendages. And this helps them to move. Okay, what about the reproductive system? Reptiles, now I think we saw in fish have an external fertilization. The females will lay the eggs, the males will come along later and kind of spray them with this fluid that has the sperm in them, and external fertilization happens. But for reptiles, we begin to see internal fertilization. So you are actually going to see something more along the lines of something closer to mammals, where the male will insert his penis into the female. Fertilization from sperm to egg will happen that way, and then she will carry the eggs inside. Most of the reptiles are oviparous. Now look back through your notes before to remind yourself what oviparous means. Kind of think about it for a little bit. Oviparous is where reproduction happens by developing young within eggs that are laid and hatched outside of the parent. So oviparous is reproducing by developing young within eggs that are laid and hatched outside the body. Now, with some reptiles, you're going to get some parental care. meaning the parent is going to care for the young. Snakes, not so much, but crocodiles, you see here a picture, the eggs are hatched outside on land, but then this mom crocodile is carrying the young back to the water. Okay, what about tuatara? They resemble a version of maybe something from the dinosaur age. They're only found off the islands of North Zealand. And they have a pineal gland at the top of their skull that detects light. And it actually determines changes in the length of the day. And those would, if you're wondering where to put that, that would be more in the nervous system with the senses. And these are just some example pictures of lizards that are in the class of reptiles, and these are chameleon lizards. You can also have the Gila monsters, which are venomous. Their venom is poisonous. And then monitor lizards, more like the Komodo dragon, more kind of like dinosaurs. And just another picture. Okay, two more terms that I want you to know. Ectodermy, which is heat from the outside. Usually they have a relatively low resting metabolic rate. Therefore, they do not generate much body heat. And their body temperature is actually higher than their surroundings. And these animals remain active for only short periods of time. And then they have to have rest. They kind of use up their heat. So this is when they're going to do their reproduction. This is when they're going to do their mating. And then they're going to have to take a break. They're going to have to rest. And then endodermy, they get their heat from the inside. These animals have relatively high metabolic rates. And they use this heat to keep their bodies warm. They usually have a lower internal temperature than their surroundings. Endoderms can remain active for long periods of time. These animals have greater energy needs. They need to eat more than ectoderms. All right, I've asked you to compare and contrast lizards and snakes, and you can see all of that here. Snakes do not have legs. They hear kind of through their skull bones. They have eyes, but they don't have an eyelid. So they can't close their eyes. They molt their skin. They only have one lung. And they have a very, very movable jaw that allows them to eat large things. Lizards, they have legs, but be aware, there are some legless lizards. And they have external ear openings. They can close their eyes. They can, much like molting, they can regenerate their tail. They have two lungs, and they have a hinged jaw, but it's not as movable as the snake. And then finally, I wanted you to know some defense mechanisms for the reptiles. We talked about some of these a little bit, but I want you to get these down in your notes. Now, as I'm looking at the clock, I'm in the art room. The bell is about to ring, so I'm going to go ahead and close this video off here, but I want to make sure that you get all of those things down in your notes, so pause, rewind, replay as much as you need to, and we'll see you in class.